Welcome into the 7th episode of New Zealand Water Polo's Inside the Game. Today, we put the focus on coaching and we catch up with Lionel Randall, one of New Zealand's leading coaches. Or should I say, one of South Africa's leading coaches. Yes, originally out of South Africa, he's now been in New Zealand for just over 2 years and he's already making his mark both nationally at a domestic level and now at Auckland Grammar School. Lionel, welcome to the program. Lovely to have you.
Evening, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Well, first up, how are you enjoying life in New Zealand?
Oh, yeah, no, I'm loving it. It's been incredible to be over here. Fallen in love with the country from day one, and certainly found the people to be unbelievably friendly. And so, yeah, no, it's home. This is home.
How you got involved in the sport of water polo? Where did it all begin?
I was quite fortunate in the city that I grew up in. It's a small city down in the Eastern Cape called East London, When I got to high school, the city had just built 2 Olympic-sized water polo pools, and major complexes, a 50-meter pool and 2 35 by 25s in the same complex, plus a 25 by 20 diving well. And so, water polo kind of hit a boom in the city at the same time. And I was a swimmer at the time, and I had a geography teacher who walked past me the one day and sort of tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, "You Randall, that swimmer, aren't you?" I said, "Oh no, sir, no, yeah, I am." He said, "Right, that's it. You actually play water polo from tomorrow." And I said, "Oh, no, I don't know anything about it. I'm not so sure about that." He said, "No, I'm actually not asking you, I'm telling you, and you'll be there." And so, yeah, I kind of went there to the first training and fell in love with the sport from there. I probably struggled a bit in the beginning because back then the rules weren't quite as skill reliant as what they are nowadays. There's a lot more preseason rugby going on there and wrestling. But yeah, no, it was really, really good. We as we got older, we played against the masters. So that was the teachers, the old guys in the evenings, and they taught us a lesson there. You look at them with their beer bellies and think, okay, we're super fit. We're gonna take these guys, and we never did. I mean, we got hidings, and you learn a different aspect of the game. That being fit is one thing, but actually team cohesion and skill and ball work is, it takes it to a whole different level. When you've got all of those together, it's actually quite a beautiful game. And so that was the early roots. From there, I studied in the same city for 3 years after school, and my old school needed a coach. So I took that up and coached there for 3 years. And then I moved up to a boarding school up in KZN for 3 years and ran the game there for a while. But that school, was out kind of in the sticks, and I was 21, 22, 23, 24 years old, quite lonely, out in the wild, and so I went back to uni to go study sports science, specifically focusing on water polo at the University of Pretoria, where the High Performance Centre is based in Pretoria, and I was the first person to study water polo actually. So a lot of it's kind of good in one way and not really good in the other. A lot of my studies was based on rugby, and luckily at the time the Blue Bulls Rugby Union, they were from Pretoria as well. The Bulls were on their kind of on the crest, they were doing well, so a lot of my sort of studies was based on them, and I had to translate that to water polo. And very fortunate at the same time, Ratko Rudic, who's he's regarded as the best water polo coach in the world, he came over to South Africa and ran a conference at the same time. So a lot of my practical was based on what his theory, his methods that he brought over. And then so I got credited kind of on that there. And then one thing led to the next. I was at Pretoria Boys for 7 years as the head of water polo there. And one thing led to the next, moved on. So always at the school level, got involved with refereeing. That grew more at one stage than the coaching. I reffed in, at 1 or 2 junior world champs. And then the coaching bug really kicked off when the Aussies came over to South Africa we had a 5-match test series against Australia under 18, and we were quite fortunate to have won that series 4-0, and unexpectedly so. And yeah, one thing led to the next, and next minute, when was that? I don't know. I think that was 2014 or 15. I don't know. I get the years confused now. As I was saying earlier, just put the kids to sleep, so it's. I mean, we get confused with what the years are.
Can you give us an understanding of how big and how popular water polo is in South Africa?
At school level, I would say it's extremely, it's extremely popular, extremely structured. There's many of the schools that have directors of water polo as a full-time role. some schools, the one school that I was at, Pretoria Boys High, they had 29 water polo teams in 2009 at the one school. So it's massive, you'd have big crowds coming out, there's massive national tournaments. Sadly, for some reason, and over the years, nobody can quite put their finger on it, but there's a major dropout, massive. I remember a few years back, somebody saying only 3% of players continue after school. And I think if you could just keep double or triple of that, of that number as a minimum, I think their results would be completely different. Part of that is, people go off to uni, there's different interests. Rugby is obviously a major game. The professionalism of sports like rugby, cricket, hockey, etc., where players get sort of looked after a lot more than water polo. And I think, things fall apart a little bit for the seniors, not because of lack of interest. I think more because of, probably because of lack of opportunity probably at the senior level. But from a junior level, they're extremely professional, extremely competitive.
Lionel, what did you learn from refereeing the game that you have now brought into your sort of coaching philosophy, or has made you a better coach?
Yeah, I think being at some of those tournaments as a referee and seeing that, everybody's human. The first time you arrive there, you in anything, in a new job, in whatever it is, you think, oh, lucky me to be here, and you kind of take the back foot. But the more you look and the more you stand around, you realize even the top guys make big mistakes. And but the difference is that they walk it off and they're thinking about what's the next big call they're going to get right. So I think that's the big learning that I was able to translate to coaching. That, so what if you get that one bad call wrong? So many coaches, we dwell on that one timeout that you maybe got wrong, or bad call, or bad sub, or you had sub, or you didn't select a player that a couple of years later you always think, oh, maybe I should have selected that player, or I got it wrong. Move on, put it right through changing the system, through motivating someone else, but don't dwell on a small negative, because that can eat up too much time. And there's so much positive that you can go towards, rather than dwelling on that one thorn in your shoe that's going to hold you back. So that is one big thing. I can remember my first game refereeing a women's game at Junior World Champs, and I was so nervous before the game, my legs were shaking. And I remember the girls, the coaches actually picked up on it, and they only told me years later when I met them as a coach, and they said, we saw that you were quite nervous, and we told the players to act up. So they were pulling their own tugs and screaming and shouting. I'm, of course, now you start thinking, whoa, what am I doing? And I remember after the game, what was really awesome, there was one of the FINA, the chairman of the TWPC, Gianni Lanzi, called me aside and he said, I can see that you're quite nervous there. I'm going to give you a day off tomorrow, and I want you to think about it. And tomorrow in the hotel, I want you to tell me where you went wrong in this game, or what you can do to fix it. And at the time, I was kind of feeling overwhelmed. And the next day, he saw me in the hotel and said, what did you do? I said, I overthought everything. And he said, right, great. Okay, so I'm going to give you a lower game tomorrow to work your way back up again. And slowly through people like that, people guiding you along the way, giving you encouragement, you kind of realize, actually, we're all in this together.
When you arrived in New Zealand, what were your immediate impressions of the sport in this country?
In fact, I must say that's probably the most refreshing, amazing thing that I've experienced over here in New Zealand, where everybody is prepared to share with each other. There's an incredible sense of community that I've sensed, where whether it's the strength and conditioning coaches, psychologists, physios, everybody's jumping on board to try and make the game better. Coaches sharing ideas. It's actually been unbelievable, where everybody wants to see the next person succeed. And certainly to be open to ideas and seeing other coaches get success, regardless of whether their coach is an under 14 coach or under 12 or even a flippable coach. There's something you can learn from them. We've been quite fortunate with the national camps to have them in the NAC pool on a Sunday, and you often see I think they're 7 and 8 year olds. I'm not quite sure, but you see them in the shallow pool. They're doing the flippable, and to hear that buzz of excitement, the parents cheering the kids on, and it's all positive. They're no real scoreboards, but they're getting stuck in for about 40 minutes. You learn from that as well, because you think, well, we were all once there. The national men's and women's players were once in that position, and so if we could have them playing with that sort of joy and that happiness, they can inspire those ones to, you know what I mean? And the circle keeps going. And I've one or two camps, so asked some of the young coaches, and I think the coaches are like 14, 15 years old, said, hey, how do you get the kids to be so excited? And they, of course, think that you're just trying to be nice, but actually, I'm being sincere. You know, how do you get them so happy? Because give us some of those magic.
Since arriving in New Zealand, you've gone on to become the New Zealand men's under-18 coach and the assistant coach to the New Zealand men's senior team. What are your observations about the high-performance side of the sport, the elite end, in terms of pathways and the way things are done?
I think the pathway is pretty clear. I think the way to get into the national teams is it's really unbelievable. It's top notch. Where, you know, let's just say you and I were trying to make the team, or we weren't selected. We could go back to our clubs. We would have work-ons. You know, our coaches could. It's quite approachable. They could approach New Zealand Water Polo or the coaches of those particular teams and say, "Hey, can you give us some feedback for these players?" They would go back and work on that at the club. And so you may not make it today, but certainly if you keep knocking on that door and you keep working on the work-ons, anybody can make the national team over here, which I find is fantastic. And that everything, selections are so transparent. I think that's also been quite a breath of fresh air, you know. I think those are things that stood out. I think the leagues and the structures and the tournaments and the opportunities for the players to play is awesome, you know, and I think the networks, being so close to Australia, the connections that former Kiwis have made in Europe, in the USA, I think for young Kiwi players, they can tap into a lot of the resources that they have, which perhaps they don't even know that we have over here, but they're unbelievable, and New Zealanders are respected all over the world, and I think the opportunities for Kiwis is unbelievable, to go and play and experience this game and travel. So,
well, what do you believe is holding New Zealand water polo back, preventing us from maybe fulfilling our potential as a water polo nation?
For me, the biggest hurdle at the moment is the lack of facilities. You know, if I look back, if I compare the two countries, South Africa, New Zealand, you know, there's probably about 40 or 50 schools that have Olympic-sized pools back in South Africa, and I'm talking 35 meters. There's one particular school that has a 50-meter pool, 2 meters deep, as well as a 35 by 20-meter pool. That's at one school. You know, then there's and so that's only exclusively for their school kids to train in. You know, they're not sharing and training at 9:30 at night or 5 o'clock in the morning, whatever. It's just a dedicated time in the afternoon. So I think if every city had, well, not every city. I mean, the water polo playing cities for now, until the game, you know, blows out the water. Excuse the pun. But I reckon if there were 4 or 5 high performance centres dedicated towards water polo around, I reckon New Zealand would close a significant gap, because it's more time in the water, it's more practices per week. There's more of a free time. You know, you don't have to worry about everything being structured and kind of ticking every minute, making sure there's a plan. The players would have time to have their own freedom and to develop their style, you know, which a lot of the European countries have, because they've obviously got the sea. You can jump in and have that free spirit of play. So I think that's probably lacking. If you compare it to New Zealand rugby, there's a paddock wherever you go. There's a park, there's a patch of grass, and there's often boys playing touch rugby, boys and girls playing touch rugby, throwing a ball around, and there's their own style of play, which over years has led to being world leaders in that sport. And so I think if we were given the same opportunity with facilities over here, that would be a significant game changer.
Okay, I want to ask you this question. What do you believe the key is to being a good coach? What's your sort of philosophy?
I think team comes first. You know, of course, your individual goals are extremely important, and we in the beginning we've got to be open and transparent as to what those are. But I think my philosophy is probably a culture based on trust. There needs to be integrity in what we do. So I would like my teams to be seen as being physically prepared, mentally prepared. They're going to give you an extremely hard game, but when you get out the pool, they're the first people that you want to have a coffee with and catch up and build a relationship and actually ask, hey man, how did you do this? Rather than saying, oh, thank goodness that game's out the way, you know? So kind of relationships is another cornerstone of my philosophy. If you don't have a relationship with, with opposition, with referees, with opposition coaches, the game's actually, it's not going to grow. So that's probably key. I'm quite passionate about the game. The game's given me so many opportunities over the years. It's, life-changing opportunities. It's, It's incredible. And so I respect it that much that I want to pass it on to whoever I coach or play against or whoever it may be, that they fall in love with the game as I have and get the same opportunities one day.
You've been in New Zealand for coming on 3 years now. What was it like when you sort of first put the silver fern on, realising, look, you're no longer representing South Africa, but now representing New Zealand? It
was actually a pretty, I'll be honest, last December was actually it was quite a emotional moment. It was quite special, really incredibly special. I was standing over there in Kuwait and standing and listening to the anthem. We're going to get permanent residency within the next couple of weeks, and kind of realizing, wow, this is home now. This is and it's reflecting on the journey, and kind of from learn to swim right in the beginning to now. It's a huge privilege to be a part of it. It really is, and it's something that I've still got the first New Zealand shirt that I've been given. When I kind of first arrived here, it's incredibly special for me. It's a huge privilege.
Well, Lionel, thank you for joining us on episode 7 of Inside the Game. And to everybody watching, hope you did enjoy some wonderful insight there from one of New Zealand's leading coaches. He's a class act. I think he is just a wonderful resource for coaching in this country. He's got an open mind. He is keen to take on new ideas. He's not afraid to sort of write his own book that all other coaches might end up one day reading. And so, we're very, very lucky to have him in this country. On behalf of myself and New Zealand Water Polo, we look forward to catching up with you next time on New Zealand Water Polo's Inside the Game.